Yes, and now to discuss the refugee issues, we have invited Thomas Vargas, the head of the UNHCR representative in Indonesia. Thank you for coming, Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead. Hi.
Yes, and then we know that the number of the refugee last year is more than 65 million people. Will we see like more refugees in the coming years because of the conflicts in the world?
I wish I had good news to share with you, but in fact, 65 million displaced people around the world, forcibly displaced from their homes, is a staggering figure, and it's actually unprecedented in our history of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and of the UN itself. So it's a very disturbing figure, and the trend has increased by 10% over last year. So the likelihood is, unless something is done, we could see the figure even increase next year.
So we see a rising number, but what's the core problem of the whole displacements in the first place?
It's a protracted problem. It's one that's been going on for many years now. And the fact is, sadly, there's so many wars that are forcing people to flee their homes that have been going on for many years, and without them being resolved, there are new ones that are starting. If you look at Afghanistan, for instance, that country has been at war or in instability for over 15 years already. And even today, as we speak, we have fresh flows of people leaving to safety in other countries from Afghanistan. But it's unfortunately not only Afghanistan. We have Somalia, we have Syria also as a serious conflict that is driving people from their homes, and many others, unfortunately.
What about world organizations that are tackling this issue very well? We know that Angela Merkel was named President of the Year by Time magazine for doing a good job in Europe and maybe on an international level. How do you see them doing their job right now?
In Europe?
Yes,
well,
Germany in particular.
Germany in particular, well, we're very grateful for Angela Merkel and the Prime Minister's response to that situation there in Germany. Last year, at the height of the crisis, Germany let in almost 1 million refugees. Unfortunately, it wasn't the same in other countries in Europe, but I think the crisis there has really sent a message to the world that something needs to be done. Countries need to come together to find a solution, because Germany or single countries in areas that are affected aren't able to do it alone. It takes a united effort from all countries together to solve this issue.
Now, despite Germany, we know that Amnesty International in May conducted a research on refugees, and it shows that the majority of our citizens in European countries are still unaware of this issue and even reluctant to do something about it. Now, why is that?
I'm not sure that they would be unaware. I think right now it's very much on the forefront in the headlines and in the news. Maybe it's that they don't fully understand who a refugee is, why they are forced to flee their homes, what drives them to safety in another country. And once they understand the plight that people have gone through, the massive human rights violations, the wars, the bombs falling overhead that force them to find safety for them and their families, I think people start realizing that they need to help as a matter of shared humanity.
Yeah. Have we done enough to help the refugees if we, talk about not only the government, but also like us?
Well, I think it's a very poignant question, because it takes everyone to pitch in. Here in Indonesia, there are over 13,000 refugees and asylum seekers. The government has been very generously allowing refugees to stay here until we can help find a longer-term solution for them. And this is the type of solidarity that we need in the world today, for countries to come together to decide that they are going to help people who are fleeing for their lives. After all, even the Prophet Muhammad himself was a refugee who fled from Mecca to Medina and was welcomed there by the people. And very much going to your question is local communities helping, they're the ones who do the most because they are really there on the ground and can welcome refugees and can help them in their time of need.
Now, let's talk about child refugees just a little bit. What's being done? We know that there's a lot of child refugees that are missing from their camps. What's being done to sort of solve this problem, to prevent it from happening in the future?
Well, it is a big problem. If you look at the global statistics, this 65 million that we were talking about at the beginning, over 50% of those people are children. And many of them are without their parents. They are unaccompanied. They're subject to abuse by smugglers and traffickers, exploitation. You can imagine when a child is alone, even in their own country, they face dangers. So in a refugee situation, it's even worse. So we work together with a range of partners to help children and to make sure that they are safe and that they can be well taken care of.
Now, about these partners in Indonesia, which ones are doing a lot, and what are the challenges that they're facing in Indonesia right now?
Well, we have in fact, yesterday was World Refugee Day, and we celebrated, or I should say commemorated, refugees all around the world and here in Indonesia, and their resilience and their hopes that they aspire for the future. But we also recognized local partners that are helping us here in Indonesia to help them. Partners like Dompet Duafa, like Suaka, like the National Human Rights Commission and the National Red Cross. These are all important partners, even small partners like Roshan Learning Center. These were all partners that we recognized yesterday in honor of the work that they are doing for refugees here in Indonesia. But it's reflective of this partnership that needs to take place not only with governments but with civil society, with local organizations that recognize that this is the shared humanity that we share with refugees and need to help at every level.
For asylum seekers to file for a status as refugee or for asylum, the process took months, even years. Like what can be done to help those in need?
Well, the first thing is for governments to leave their borders open for those that are fleeing conflict and the types of persecution that cause refugees to flee their homes. And secondly, UNHCR does its best to support these governments to ensure that those who are filing for asylum get fair and efficient decisions. We have to be very careful. We step in for the government when the government isn't in a position to do that work themselves. And of course, because we are a humanitarian organization, we have not the resources that governments have, so it does take a long time. But we do the job well, and we are careful and make sure that refugees who are deserving of international protection are helped.
Speaking of protection, what's the update of the Rohingya refugees from Myanmar? What's being done right now?
I assume you're referring to those that arrived in the boat crisis last May here in Aceh. We were very grateful for the reception that they received and the fact that the government allowed them to, they rescued them, and local fishermen rescued them and allowed them to stay. We're in the process now of helping the government find longer-term solutions for them, and that ranges from family reunification. Many of them were children, are children, and others are separated from their families, so we're trying our best to reunite families. We're trying our best also to look into the possibility of them going to third countries if for the most vulnerable. So there's a range of options that we're looking at.
Okay. Now before we go quickly, the UN Security Council and UNHCR, what kind of synergy is happening and what's coming up next?
Well, there's going to be a meeting that the UN General Assembly at a very high level is calling in September, bringing countries together to discuss large movements of refugees and migrants. And we're hoping that that will lead to some real results and commitments from countries to address this issue, and we're hoping that the world will stand with us.
All right,
Yes,
sounds great.
finger
Thank you so much,
crossed.
Mr. Vargas.
Thank you for having me.
so much, Mr. Vargas.
Now, up next, the Indonesian government vowed to hold 25 tax evaders all across the country.
We'll be right back.